Accenture and so on, are all driven to this position where the customer says, we want it done to the best possible quality, but we want to pay less and less to do it. And of course we've got the hacker. Hacker types, we've organised the hackers into different categories, different types here. Botnet builders, spam and DOS attackers. Most of them are, as you say, kind of amateurs. So they either do it because they're politically motivated or because they're small-time criminals and they think they can get credit cards out of the system. But in the background, there are the more serious threats. If you look at, again, this distribution function against time of the circles indicate the size of the attacks in different industries. Here was the Sony one, and up there were companies which also lost a great deal of money. Citigroup, particularly in the financial services area, lost a great deal of money. Does that worry you? Well, it does to some extent, but it's not quite as critical. It's just a sort of very broad brush picture. What really worries you is do the attackers want to do something specific to my system? They don't just want to take money out of it, they want to get information out of it in a way which allows them to control your system. In other words, what the customer didn't understand really at the beginning was they didn't just want a secure system, they wanted to know something about the threats. They just said, do a system which is secure, but they never actually said, oh, of course we're in the energy supply business and therefore we are very worried about attacks on our command and control systems, which clearly could maybe stop the distribution of electricity, disable certain features. Clearly if you were a foreign intelligence service, you might say, well, it'd be very useful to know how the distribution of electricity works in the UK. Not because it's an academic exercise, but because you'd like to know how many power supplies actually go into, say, RAF Wharton or something, how many helicopters they've actually got on the ground at Carl's Roads. The kind of thing which actually allows you to detect the strength of the country in terms of its ability to respond. So electricity supplies, information supplies are part of what we call critical national infrastructure. Shall I change topic at this point? You're all happy? You're kind of, you're all... Man at the back says it's okay, we'll keep going, yes. What kind of attacks can you use on a system? Well, this is the most common one, SQL injection. I've asked computer science classes recently about the SQL injection and they said it came up in the next course next week and they would tell me then. But presumably you might know a little more about this kind of thing yourself. It's an old game of attaching a SQL command as part of the URL. You send the URL to the web page and it does what it ought to do with the data, but it also goes and sends that SQL command to the database, extracts some data, attaches it to the return, and the browser, or whatever is at the far end, therefore extracts, I use the word exfiltrate because it's part of jargon which impresses the customers, exfiltrates data from the system. But it is the most common attack. Are we worried about that as a customer? Well, again, you'd say, well, no, we know about cross-site scripting, we know about cross-site source forgery, we know about SQL attacks. You know, those are the kind of things which you as a supplier can easily fix. You know, go away and fix all those ones. The problem is really the ones down here, the ones which you've hardly ever seen, and yet in fact are probably the most dangerous kind of attacks. There's very little signature, very little information known about them. They don't often occur, or if they do occur, we don't know that they occur. So the customer really should be interested in the other end of the spectrum. Now, did the supplier say anything about that? Well, they said, no, we'll fix all the obvious ones. We'll get rid of the Stammer worm, which is about 10 years old, and we'll get rid of all the kind of the junk, basically. And we'll run the system for you as cheaply as possible. Most of these attacks we plot against time. IBM collects a lot of data in this area, and you can see the kind of gradually rising trend of cross-site scripting and SQL injection. You might ask, why does IBM know this stuff? Well, as I hinted on the previous slides, we run the security operations for 3,700 companies worldwide, monitor all of their firewalls, all of their IPS systems, all of their antivirus systems. We probably monitor everyone who logs in, every server that's patched to the wrong level. And we actually collect attacks on those systems. We get data at around about 1.5 billion events per day. So it's not surprising. We can tell you exactly how many SQL injection or cross-site scripting attacks occur of a particular kind, and we can tell you where those attacks came from. Of course, we block all those attacks, but then that's what the technology is designed to do. This is where it gets interesting, because now we've got a dodgy employee as well. This is your typical employee in the customer over there who you've gone and recruited. You've told him not to touch those sites out there which are bad sites, not to waste his time at work. And what does he do? Well, actually, he goes off to the sites which have got malicious threats embedded on the sites. Why does he go to those ones? Well, the names kind of give away why he goes there. And the picture kind of emphasises the kind of person he is. We don't have to ask any questions there. People will do stupid things. You can have business conduct guidelines, you can have computer misuse acts. People will still say, oh, well, it wasn't very much, it was only just going to a few sites. I was just downloading some music or something, it was all right, really. But of course, the bad people know this, and they say, oh, well, why don't you come to our site through an anonymous proxy? Growth of anonymous proxies by year. What do these anonymous proxies do? Well, they allow you to go to a site which normally your employers think is a bad idea, and get there anonymously so that they can't track you and sort of discipline you, or in other words, find out exactly where you've been. To some extent, anonymous proxies might be a good idea. If you're trying to go to a site and you're coming from a country where the regime is more restrictive, then an anonymous proxy might be a good thing. Unfortunately, many of these anonymous proxy sites have been created with these kind of categories of computing in mind, and it's exactly those sites which contain the bad stuff. And how much bad stuff is there? Well, this is where it all gets a bit sensitive, and as an employee of IBM, I have to tread very carefully here as to exactly what I say. So with a deep breath and hoping that you're recording exactly what I say and that no one's going to change the words afterwards. These are direct quotes from SC magazine, and I think from Sam's notes. And so they said in this magazine that this organisation called Mandiant had done some research and discovered that a Chinese government organisation associated with the Chinese military had attacked 141 victims and had several thousand people engaged on those kind of attacks. IBM did not say that, SC Magazine did, and Mandiant did the research. Got that straight? Just in case there's any suggestion that we're maligning the Chinese government, I'm sure they're all good guys. I'm sure some of you come from China, so I'm not attempting to criticise any of the background here. I'm just saying this is what's in the press. This is a more criminally oriented kind of attack vector, I suppose. I mean, clearly if you're a foreign intelligence service, you can write Java and you can write exploits on Java systems yourself. But there is a growing area of kind of almost commerce, as you might say, where people create attacks on systems and they sell the attack vector. Now, we knew that, in fact, the Sun Oracle system, Sun was bought by Oracle, and therefore they're running the Java system worldwide. One or two holes have been found in Java recently. One of them, it turns out, was carefully crafted into an attack, what you might call a zero-day attack. In other words, you could pay your money here, buy this code, and on the same day you could attack a large number of Java systems. How much is this worth? Well, this person was selling it for 100,000. And what's more, this is an organisation which actually had done 7 versions of it. They tested on Windows 7, they'd advertised it, and they were taking money by PayPal. this is not kind of amateur stuff anymore. This is a serious business. And this is where, again, the customer didn't quite get it and the supplier didn't tell them they hadn't got it. So just going back to sort of how do you outsource your computer system? Well, you do it with this kind of knowledge in mind, and you specify in the request for proposals that we assume you'll do all the good stuff, get rid of cross-site scripting, etc. But you will bear in mind new attacks, and you will tell us when your Java's not patched in less than half an hour or something. Otherwise, you'll close the system, particularly if I'm running a sensitive command and control system which is looking after power supplies for hospitals or something. Now, it's this mismatch between what the customer really wanted and what the supplier actually delivered, which is where everything gets a bit risky. Now, the actual attack in this case is done by W32 Dooku. You're all familiar with that. I'm not either, but this is how it works. It's a worm. In other words, you have to download it to your system, and then it runs on its own in the background. And this particular one, once it's got onto your system, it then sets up communication links back